welcome to Season 5 of the Spotlight series, Don't Just Survive, Thrive. This podcast was born out of the 2020 global pandemic. Season 1 was launched to help people through the pandemic. Season 2 focused more on work-related issues such as HR, marketing and leadership. Season 3 and 4 centred on startup founders and tech leaders, revealing the secrets to their success. The focus of Season 5 is about how technology can have a positive impact on people and planet. My name is Nicholas Steele, founder of JJP Talent Solutions, an Australian IT recruitment company. I've had the privilege of talking to numerous tech leaders over the last 20 plus years and love sharing their stories and insights. I hope you enjoy listening. I'm delighted to introduce Tony Shermer. I hope I pronounced your name correctly there, Tony. CEO at CQ Solar and co-founder at Neo Creative. CQ Solar builds cutting-edge technology which reduces losses in solar farms by up to 25%. Tony, thank you for joining me on Season 5, Episode 2 of the Spotlight series, Don't Just Survive, Thrive.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure, and lovely to meet you, Tony. Thank you very much. And I hope I did pronounce your name correctly.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Nailed it.
Brilliant. So, Tony, let's start. Tell me a bit more about your personal story and your career so far.
Okay, so when I first started, I started out doing mechatronics at uni, which is all robotics. Oh. Yeah, so I did a couple of years, but I ended up dropping out and starting a business. So because I was fixing people's computers all through uni, and I thought, well, we can make some money out of this. And before you know it, I had a online business that was selling computer parts online and fixing people's computers offline. And we did that for about 5 years or so, I reckon. So it was when I was 18 we did that. We started that.
Did you finish uni in the end?
No.
No, okay.
I dropped out, and then we ended up doing after about 5 years or so, there was a number of reasons why, but we decided to shut it down. And we started looking at other things that we could do, and one of them was to build other people's websites, because everyone had asked how we'd got the e-commerce side working. So we started into that field, and we started building other people's e-commerce setups. So it started off as really small businesses, but in a couple of years from there, that's been going about 12 years now. And we've done everything from mum and pop operations all the way to super retail group,
wow.
all the way to frontline stores, Davy Water. There's a whole bunch of big brands we've done, and that was from just doing that. And from that, we then started a product called Storebase, which we've just launched maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, and that's an e-commerce platform based on some open source software. So that's the Neo Creative side. The CQ Solar side was actually, so my dad is an electrical engineer. He came to me after I'd done all this stuff, and he said, "Hey, I want to build a website, build a business," and so I've agreed to help him commercialize that tech. So he's the brains behind all of the advanced tech there on the CQ Solar side. And there is some pretty advanced solar farm tech in that. But we've been doing that for probably about 5 years, I think. There's probably been about 6 years of development in that.
So your father is the founder then of CQ Solar?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So you've had an interesting career history there. What would you say the main highlights are, and what have been the main challenges?
I think that because we decided to bootstrap the businesses, I think that was the biggest challenge. Being young and naive when we did this, like when I started, I don't think I knew anything different. So, but the grind was actually just going about doing the next thing and learning the next thing. I think was very productive. It's a very trial by fire type way of achieving it. Yeah, I think that's got its benefits. It's got its drawbacks, but it's that was one of the challenges, I think, of not having any help, not having any mentoring, not having any none of that stuff, and just going into it.
And I guess you doing it that way, you learn a lot, you get a lot of war wounds, and with bootstrap,
you know what works. Like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work, and people like to tell other people how things should work, how they shouldn't work, and I think that at the end of the day, you can only test it. You see what works, see what doesn't work. There's some things that we found work very specifically for some businesses that really don't work for others, and it's the same technique, the same tactics. So.
And also, I guess as well, bootstrapping, not having much money, that's a challenge. But also, you still get a certain amount of freedom about what you're doing with the resources that you have as well.
You do get a fair bit of freedom with what you've got, with the resources you do have. You can just you don't have shareholders, you don't have other people you're kind of needing to report back to. You can just do what works, and generally it comes up with come up with more innovative ways. I think you come up with a lot more innovative ways to do things. One of the ways that we were doing this way back was to use press releases to get SEO results. So instead of the search engine results, we put a press release out, have the links for the search engine, in there. And because that would get aggregated and populated across a bunch of news sites, that would cost you a very small amount of money, but you get a huge amount of backlinks for your SEO. So that was one way of doing the e-commerce side that we'd only seen a couple of people do before. So there's lots of innovative ways you can kind of get around. I think having no money is a benefit and a curse. It's a benefit in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you're obviously very focused on how you're spending each dollar and cent, so to speak.
Yeah.
Solar. So in a place like Australia, not like the UK where I'm from, that it seems like a very obvious solar energy seems like a very obvious solution to energy within Australia.
Would you know what the sun looks like being UK?
I know what the rain looks like. When the sun comes out in the UK, I've lived here nearly 11 years now, but when the sun comes out in the UK, everybody is happy. It's a wonderful place to be. It just doesn't happen very often. But anyway, forget about the UK. Solar in the UK is probably not the best option. But coming back to solar, what are the main benefits of solar? But what are the problems as well that many people, like myself, are not really aware of?
There's a range of problems. There's a range of problems from the DC side all the way to the AC side. In Australia specifically, we have a what we call the NEM or the AMEO spot price. So you end up having a spot price of electricity at any one point in time. So if you have a gas-fired turbine or something like that come online, you might put a bid in on that on the pricing, so someone can buy your energy at the price that you bid. And the next person will put in their bid, and whatever sells the cheapest sells the best. Now the problem is with that is that at the moment, during the day, it can go negative. And that's because you have to keep the coal-fired power stations online. So they have to keep going at night, so they will bid negative during the day. And if you're a solar farm, then you're competing with a negative price. So it does have some pretty harsh retail challenges. And the solar obviously doesn't work during the night, so it ends up being sometimes not very profitable to do solar in Australia because of that system. So there are some big challenges specifically on that area. And then there are problems on the DC side on the way that solar is hooked up. You end up having, they end up being these like, if you've ever had Christmas lights and one of them fails, that's a really good example of how solar farms are actually hooked up. If one Christmas light fails, then the whole block fails. If one solar panel fails, the whole block. Generally, the whole string will fail, but sometimes, depending on how it's wired up, the whole block will be affected or fail. So, what our gear does is fix that, but that's a maintenance nightmare because you can't tell which solar panels failed very easily. You end up having to need to put on thermal drones, like send up some drones and find out which one's heating up, because you're not going to send out a single person to measure the equipment on every single panel when you have a million panels. You know, it's not economical to do that. So having the best thing that you can really do is send out a drone, or if you have a string monitor, which is more and more common, you'll see which strings are being affected, and then you can isolate it to about 20 panels. But then you still have to find out which of those 20 are broken and then go forward on that. It doesn't even have to be broken, it can just be dusty. If it's dusty, it causes the same effect. If it has hail damage, it causes the same effect. If it has something called PID, which is potential induced degradation, it'll have the same effect. So any way that it draws down power, even a cloud that hits one, that's shading one of the panels in the string but not the rest, will have the same effect, and it can bring down the string quite significantly. Like maybe, we're talking 30%, 40% less power. It's just huge amounts if you've got damaged panels within the system.
So the two main problems that you said there, the first one seemed more of an economic problem.
Yeah, it is.
It's a commercial issue from the price of energy. But the other one is, I guess, more of a technical type issue that you can resolve. So how does C-Cube Solar's technology help solve those problems?
Well, instead of putting them in like Christmas lights, if you imagine the Christmas lights are like a single lane highway with every single panel stacked up behind its neighbor, and it can only go as fast as the slowest panel. And that's why you get such big losses. So if one of them's dirty or dusty or broken, it takes down the rest of the power because it can only go as fast as that slow panel. Our technology mathematically separates them out so that it acts like a multi-lane highway. It acts like each one is independent. And it does what we call string balancing. So it automatically balances all the strings, automatically balances all the panels all at once. And that hasn't been done before as far as we know. And allows what they call a DC bus to be created before the inverter. And it just simplifies. So firstly, if there were a broken panel within the system, it would only take out that one panel. So the rest of them wouldn't be affected.
Yeah. And
then on top of that, we have monitoring on the whole lot. So we can tell when certain panels are doing certain things. It comes down to, you can tell because we have 1 second data. So we're collecting 1 second data on every single solar panel over an entire solar farm. And we can tell exactly what's happening all the way down to 1 second. And on top of that, you can then simplify battery usage on a solar farm. Right now, putting batteries on a solar farm is very complicated because of the way the battery inputs are. They generally need to go from DC to AC and then plug your battery into the AC, and that becomes very complicated. We can keep everything on DC and put the battery directly on DC. So that means you can have a grid battery, something, just an enormous grid battery that doesn't have the complications of what we currently have with solar batteries, your solar batteries.
Fantastic. And so obviously there's going to be lots of commercial savings there as well that you're creating with your particular technology as well as environmental. And renewable energy. We've been going on about renewable energy since I was at school, which I hate to say it was quite a long time ago. But what do you think the future is? We're now in 2023. What do you think is the future of renewables, in particular solar, but more generally for both Australia and also on a global scale as well?
I've actually had a chat with a couple of engineers about this, and it seems like we need to ramp up production much faster than what we're even doing it now for it to be not going to be causing blackouts in the future. It's something that I think we're lacking the technology, but not the policy. So there's the will, but we don't have the way yet. I think there are certain, for instance, battery technologies, even an enormous battery, like one of the largest batteries you can put on the grid, would pale in insignificance to something like a coal-fired power station at the moment. So what you need to do is, I know that Queensland's putting in a whole bunch of what they call reverse pump storage. So they get dams, and then they get the power, and then pump water at the bottom of the dam to the top of the dam, and then have hydro to collect the electricity back. Yeah. So it acts like a giant battery, but you're talking a battery that can store a dam worth of water. So it ends up being a significant battery that can actually work. I think if those type of things are put on the grid, I think we have a chance of using renewable energy long term. But without it, we need probably some pretty significant battery technologies to replace what we have.
So we've got the will.
Yeah.
There are the resources there, like, for example, the sun or tidal or whatever. But it's actually the storage that seems to be one of a big issue to consider. Is that right?
Yeah. Because like, if you're burning something, you can just turn that fire up and down. Yeah. As you like. If you're in the middle of the night, you can turn the fire up. If you're in the middle of, if it's 2 a.m, you can turn it down. You're trying to compete with that, and that, you can't really turn the sun on in the middle of the night at your leisure. So it's a matter of storing that energy for when you need it, and that's a challenge. But there's a couple of companies that are doing that storage in a unique way. I know there's one down Newcastle doing it. I think they're MGA Thermal. They have some blocks that are very unique. And there's a couple of other types of storage mechanisms that come along that are interesting, that might be able to solve that problem. But it is probably the biggest problem in your renewables, in my opinion. Yeah.
So that's kind of, as you say, the will, the resources, but the storage and how we're going to do that. And coming back to you, Tony, what would you say are the secrets to your success over the last so many years?
I'm not sure if there's any secrets to success. I think there's a lot of grit, a lot of just trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing. That's essentially what I think success is, because it's just a matter of doing the next trial and seeing whether or not that worked. And if it doesn't work, then you try again, and there's 1,000 ways to make a light bulb that don't work. So there's only a couple that do.
So try again, and make mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's the grit. I think it's the just unwillingness to yield. I think is the big thing there. You just keep going until you crack it.
Fantastic. And my last question: if you could turn back the clock, would you do anything differently? Do you think?
having known what we know now, probably. But I think that's always the case. I think that hindsight's 20/20, so you can't really learn from hindsight.
Yeah.
But there are a few. Yeah, there's definitely some things that we found that were way more challenging than we thought. That we thought we had flicked and finished. That when we went and pressure tested it wasn't quite done, and then we had to redo some stuff. So, and there are also some timeframes that we thought, oh, this will take 6 months, and it took 18 months. So there are some things that mainly choice of supplier and mainly trying to get ETAs right is always a challenge with engineering. So I think that one of the things that we probably may have done is held off on the launch a little longer, but again, I don't know if we would have. I think it's hard to say that at the time it seemed appropriate. So yeah.
And then it comes back to the secrets for your success, having that grit to go back and try again and what have you. Thank you very much for sharing your insights there, Tony. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
No, this is good. This has been great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Well, it's lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thanks.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe, rate and review. The Don't Just Survive, Thrive podcast is part of the Spotlight series, which includes the YouTube channel Spotlight on Software Development. If you want more insights into the software industry, particularly purpose-led tech startups and scale-ups, then subscribe to this channel. Thank you for listening. Until next time.